Let's talk about the Desert Rangers. No, not the guys in the cool armor in Fallout New Vegas. Those are potentially remnants of the Desert Rangers, but not the Desert Rangers themselves. The Desert Rangers don't exist anymore. They've merely integrated into the NCR. They do have a decently long history, though. So the Desert Rangers have actually been around since the Great War. Kind of convoluted and not a lot of information on that, but the Great War is the war where all the bombs fell and ended everything. They are a faction that have existed since then, and at 2271 they became part of the NCR due to a Ranger Unification Treaty that brought them into the NCR and meshed them in with the NCR Rangers. The Desert Rangers were forced to join due to a failing conflict with the Legion. They weren't forced by the NCR, they were forced because they didn't have any options. The NCR Rangers were much larger, and they're a part of the entire NCR army. The Desert Rangers were sort of a group of law enforcement, vigilantes, not so much an army themselves. And they took care of raiders and fiends and that sort of thing, and helped people all across the Mojave, not just in New Vegas. But then they ran into a bit bigger of a raider tribe known as the Legion, and it didn't go so well. Went very, very poorly for the Desert Rangers, obviously, and they were literally forced straight into the NCR or die. The unification between these two factions can be noted right at the statue at the Mojave Outpost in the New Vegas game world. That giant statue between the NCR Ranger and the Desert Ranger shaking hands symbolizes the unification treaty of 2271 between the two factions. Now, saying that the Desert Rangers don't exist anymore is true, but they still carry on with some of the things that they used back then, most notably the NCR Veteran Ranger armor, also dubbed as the Black Armor. It was originally used by LAPD riot squads. That's pretty nutty to think about, that in the Fallout universe, before even the bombs fell, things were so screwed up that riot squad officers used armor that looks like something out of a science fiction movie. And that's really a lot of what it is. It's like some weird sci-fi, like RoboCop Ant-Man looking armor. And it was just part of a riot squad police force in Los Angeles. It's kind of nutty. This is obviously the armor that is on the New Vegas cover, so in a lot of ways the Desert Rangers still have their presence known as the face of New Vegas. In a lot of ways, when you think of New Vegas, if you were to put a face on it, it would be that Desert Ranger armor. Obviously, it's not called that anymore. It's the NCR Ranger Veteran Armor, or Veteran Ranger Armor, and it still has that heritage back to the Desert Rangers that existed for so long before joining the NCR. The armor actually originally dates back to Fallout 1 in a way, not specifically. There was a companion known as Tycho in Fallout 1, and he is described as wearing a gas mask and a hardened leather jacket. So it's really not depicted as such in Fallout 1, but it is known as that. Tycho's grandfather was a Desert Ranger, and Tycho also comes from the Desert Rangers. This is just a part of his thing, but going along with that, not all Desert Rangers became part of the NCR. They didn't all join along with the Unification Treaty. It was optional. However, the Desert Rangers still existing was not optional. This kind of ties into the NCR's form of conquering. There's a lot of debate within the New Vegas game of the Legion conquering tribes, and they do it in a very literal sense of conquering, of how we think of conquering, destroying and assimilating. And the NCR does have their version of this. They sort of take over regions and force them to assimilate without destroying or murdering people. But they did this to the Desert Rangers. They saw an opportunity where the Desert Rangers were weak, and they destroyed and forced them to assimilate or no longer exist as Desert Rangers. This whole debate is sort of accentuated in a mod, actually, a mod by some guy 2000 known as Russell. It's an excellent mod, and he is a former Desert Ranger that didn't tag along with the NCR. And you do end up running into one of his friends that did join, and there's a bit of a conflict there. It's an interesting thing when you look into it, that not everything is peachy, and they didn't just team up and go without any sort of things being lost or damaged in the process. Now, the Desert Rangers' specific areas of prominence were in Nevada, but also areas of Arizona, so that can sort of show you where the conflict between them and the Legion really started to play out. But it was also largely in the New Vegas area where they first found their conflicts. Now, what other wasteland have they existed in? The in a way, spiritual precursor to Fallout, the game Wasteland. In Wasteland, player character controlled a team of desert rangers, so you were roaming around the wasteland as desert rangers. So it's very interesting how the desert rangers are such an old and ingrained faction that so little light is shined upon within the Fallout universe. They were around since the Great War. They were prominent in the New Vegas area and in Arizona, and they existed before Fallout even existed, and they exist primarily in Fallout because of their existence in Wasteland. So that's the Desert Rangers. That's the information on them. They're cool. They're sort of this long lost elusive tribe that did a lot of good in the Mojave before the NCR came along or before the Legion came along. They were in a lot of ways just a really altruistic, good group of people that were defending the people of the New Vegas area and the Mojave area from fiends, from raiders, from all the different tribes that we hear about, and they don't exist anymore. It's kind of this cool mystery that we get to look at, and another cool thing in Fallout that we get to look back on and speculate about and think about what could have been. And who knows, maybe in another Fallout game we travel all over the timeline, we'll be able to see these guys that still exist in their prominence during a different time period before where we're currently at.